Thanks for coming. We're going to talk, obviously, about ChatGPT and how it's a big-time liar. You'll see throughout my deck, there's a lot of these little cartoony things. These were done by Blue Willow, which is a Mid-Journey / Stable Diffusion clone, generative AI that does images, obviously. And we'll see a couple of examples of how it lies as well. So all generative AI is liars at this point. Still, as I was saying earlier, amazing. Stunning. Like the breakthrough in the past less than a year now in these things floors me. But it's really important, this will be the main takeaway of my talk, is to assume that they're lying to you and then determine in exactly what ways they're lying to you, because you're going to use these as tools. They're going to be writing content for you. They're going to be giving you ideas. You're going to have conversations with them. It'd be very helpful, but don't trust them fully. Okay, so who am I? I'm Glen Ford. These are the ways you can get to me. Most recently, VP of Product at iMerit, and before that, Director of Product Management at Allegion, RIP. These companies both did training data as a service for very large ML models. Think of self-driving cars. It was a big market for each of these companies, especially iMerit. That industry having a little bit of trouble right now, but their models consume massive amounts of annotated data, and that's what they do. The point of all this is to say that I've been in and around machine learning for, I think, five years and change now, so I kind of get it, but I'm also a layperson. I'm a dumb product manager, so not exactly an ML engineer. I will point out that the oldest I've ever felt was when I put my own image, a headshot from last year, into Blue Willow and give it no other instructions, and this is one of the things it came up with. So then I told it, hey, at least make me look like it from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, that's pretty good. So again, stunning creations from the mind, quote unquote, of these large diffusion models in this case, but wrong, very wrong. Well, maybe not very wrong, but pretty wrong. I was smiling in my photo, too. The one I uploaded, I was more like this than that. Good Lord. What's wrong with that guy? Got hit in the bad word, yeah. All right, so I sort of hinted at this one earlier. There'll be a handful of tactics, sort of pro tips for you to establish your proper, healthy relationship with ChatGPT and the others. Trust that whatever you told it to do, it didn't actually do it. So in this case, I know it's going to be hard to read, so I'll read some of it to you, and you'll have my deck, when we send out the download the decks email to come. What I did is say, hey, I'm a product manager at Jasper AI. Actually, you are. Pretend to be one. And give me some competitive analysis on Writer.com's blog, their competitors. So it sped out a very confident response as a product manager here, blah, blah, blah. I've read this article, blah, blah, blah. It highlights the importance of responsible adoption and training of generative AI. Okay, well, that actually, of course, I read the article myself. I know that that's true. Article identifies key challenges in training generative AI models. No. The article, if you read it, does mention training quite a number of times. But it's talking about human training. It's talking about training your employees to understand how to use generative AI and the problems of data bias, privacy concerns, and all that kind of stuff. So a hugely confident lie right in that sentence. And if you were to use ChatGPT in this case to start generating a blog post for yourself or whatever based on some topic, well, don't do that unless you're going to do a lot of fact checking. And I think that's one key point. A lot of us are going to stop writing as much and do a lot more fact checking because we will go to the generative AIs of the world and at least get ourselves started. But you're going to need to go through and check facts, and I'll have some concrete tips about how to do that. I have some cute little, there we go. Those are my cute little animation. I got to make sure that those get played. So That's right. Well, you should never, ever, in Keynote or PowerPoint, use animations, especially the longer they are. I'm breaking that rule because I think it's funny. So we hinted as well about tactic 2, looking it up. So we'll talk some concrete examples of that. But notice how cute she is with absolutely no nose. So our AI, generative AI for images, Blue Willow, has very confidently lied to you about what she should look like. It's otherwise a great little animation. Yeah, and chances are, if you've looked at those like Blue Willow, Midjourney, etc., they always, the more photorealistic you get with humans, they can have 6 to 8 fingers every single time. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. I've seen some bizarre things. In this one, I just kept it to cartoon, so it's less psychotic. So another thing I did, this is a little similar to what you were talking about, Daniel, but I asked it to summarize the career of Sergei Nikolenko, who's into synthetic data generation, and he's really very brilliant. And okay, so it did okay. I didn't actually check. I was asking for patents and publications and such. I have no idea if he actually did these because I didn't check it. By the way, side trip here. If you see the word overall in the last paragraph of something, ChatGPT, almost guarantee, wrote it. Because it somehow does this like 5-paragraph essay format with always a summary at the end. Almost always ends with overall. So look for that. That's more about you seeing text from some other human who didn't actually write it in that case. Or if you're going to do your own generation there, take it out. Take out the word overall. You don't need it. It's fluff. Yeah, so I asked ChatGPT to regenerate the list of his patents because you didn't see them there, but I thought they were way too few. Okay, so we get another very confident statement apologizing first, and then, which happens a lot with ChatGPT when you start to call it on its BS. Then you get some more. Okay, so it spat out only one patent, but at least that was easy to look up. And look, it's even got the patent number. All right, cool. Well, I can check that at USPTO and see exactly what it was. Exactly. Sergei Nikolenko did not patent main gun shield for battle tank. It was more. And of course, if you look back at what it was, the system of synthesizing training, blah, blah, blah. I went to the wrong slidelet. Anyway, busted. So that's looking it up. Get used to doing that if you're going to use. The more you use, and it's not only ChatGPT, I'm beating up on it, but certainly Bard and Bing thing, but some others that I have in tabs elsewhere if we want to take a look afterwards that actually do long-form writing for you. The more they write, the more likelihood that it's going to be filled with some falsehoods, or at least prone to falsehoods. Oh, so this is DALL-E's interpretation, DALL-E, the image generator, of one of those psychopath yarn walls with like different connecting the nodes that conspiracy theorists have, right? Except this guy was so psycho, it didn't even bother to write on the Post-it notes. And plus apparently baked the Post-it, the push pins at 500 degrees for about 30 minutes. So real psycho. So the reason I put that up there is so that I could make some of those jokes, which didn't work. So right there. The reason I put that up there is to understand, is to sort of give you my layperson's explanation of what's going on inside a large language model. So I explained it this way to a friend the other day, and I thought it kind of makes sense. So I pictured this sort of the connections between nodes. The nodes, these push pins, are layers in the model. And the yarn is the weights and biases, I don't remember which, between that help determine the likelihood that the next thing is the correct thing to predict based on previous information. I'll elaborate that on in a sec. But this is 175 billion pieces of yarn inside of some of these large language models. So even the folks who created them, I wouldn't even say programmed, they created them and trained them, they have no idea what's going on inside them. This is why I said earlier, explainable AI is really hard because there's 175 billion pieces of yarn. Yeah, billions and billions of yarns. And each one of them has some importance to the final prediction. And so actually what the LLMs are doing is not writing you a sentence or a paragraph or an article. They are predicting the likeliest next word based on the stuff that has come before. The LLMs also have memory cells, so throughout these layers there would be numbers, essentially, I think, that capture the context of the conversation that's come before. That's why you can have multi-step conversations. I could ask ChatGPT, now regenerate the list of patents, and it would sort of, it would fill in the context, it would understand the context from earlier in the conversation, right? So you're getting it to elaborate on things it's already said. It can do that, and that's stunning. That's one of those like flooring things to me. But the critical thing to know is that it's only predicting the next word. What's the likeliest next word? And that's why when Daniel asked ChatGPT about himself, it dreamed up this really fantastic, like, been to the moon, right? Or something like, co-founded Amazon, I don't remember, but total lies, of course. And because it doesn't know really that it's lying, it's just predicting word at a time. So we'll see another example, more along what product managers would do. I think the first examples I gave you were sort of things that I was interested in. Could this tool help me keep up with competitors? The answer is no. And by the way, it did not actually go and crawl the link that I sent it. It was reading the words that are in the link about generative AI bias, blah, blah, blah. And so it made up a whole yarn, overloaded word, made up a whole story about that. All right, so another thing, though, to get more PME is talking about the RICE methodology, as you guys may know. Okay, so explain RICE to me, reach, impact, confidence, effort. This is all good. Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, it gets off to a good start. Use the RICE methodology. You assign a score of 1 to 10 to each component for each product or feature. So the R, I, C, and E. 10's the highest score. Multiply RIC, divide by effort, and that gives you the RICE score. Anybody see a problem with that? Anybody use RICE? Okay, so, yeah, okay. Now, granted, different people will use these methods. They're not written in stone, right? But I don't use RICE. I've used things that are similar. Assign a score of 1 to 10 to each component is not correct. That is, if you look at the original Intercom blog post that explained RICE, that sort of caught my eye. So that starts the suspicion, and that's what you want to do, is look at this stuff with great suspicion. That started me suspecting, wait a second, you're starting to go off the rails, buddy. So I asked it, this is a tactic for you, ask elaborating questions. Ask it to elaborate on what it's just said. So who said that it's 1 to 10 score? Well, it very confidently lied to me and said, methodology was introduced by Sean Ellis, blah, blah, blah. Gave me his link. Oh, terrific, awesome. I'm going to be able to click that and I'm going to see that I'm wrong and it's right. Oops, no. Site's gone. So something's going on. Yep. Now, on his growth, I forget the name of it, his actual website, they have this table of who did what, and you see that Intercom, Sean McBride, who's no longer there, but he was there and came up with RICE. So, gotcha. So that's your chain of, when I was talking earlier about this thing is going to help you write, but you're going to have to become spend more of your time on fact checking than you probably ever have. This is the chain of events you have to go through, sort of breaking that down. And I'm going to have to start going faster just so we get done and have a little time for questions maybe. So this is Socrates with a laptop. I thought that was pretty damn good. I was so impressed. But his legs, I mean, you can't really see them here, but this table continues, and his lower legs have to be like paper thin. So again, came close, but no cigar. Now this is Bard, Google's sort of new limited alpha ChatGPT type thing. So I asked more about RICE. This is another tactic later on where we compare results of 2 different generative AIs. I asked it, at some point it said, hey, multiply all 4 of those components together and that's how you get the RICE score. We were just told by ChatGPT correctly that it's R times I times E all divided by, sorry, times C all divided by the effort, the E. So I asked an elaborating question, really? That can't be right. You could possibly see this thing correcting itself and apologizing, which ChatGPT probably would have. But this just absolutely plows forward with that lie. I mean, like politician level of just, go for it. So yeah, that's not correct. And it's the logic about I guess my point around logic here is that if you multiply them all straight, then if you had something that was very low reach, very low impact, and very low confidence, and an extremely high effort, then you would get, that's the thing you're going to do. So we would all be working for years on something with zero impact to the world. Nope. And another quick example here is that this is, I think, back to, I was asking ChatGPT about rice versus ice now. So ice is a similar but pretty distinct methodology. I don't know about this. Rice is useful when you have a broad impact, and ice is when you have a high impact for a smaller group of users or customers. No, that doesn't make sense logically to me. Now, I'm not a huge expert in either of these methodologies, but this just doesn't make sense. If you're trying to do an analysis that like rice might tell you when to favor high reach, low impact versus low reach, high impact. It's helping you score those kinds of situations. And ice similarly without regard to reach so much. So you're assuming that it's not a smaller group of customers, it's an irrelevant number of customers because you don't care which swath of your user base you're building for, or you've decided that it's going to affect everybody equally. So no, not right. So use logic, use your brain. Like these, again, if you think how the LLMs work, just predicting a word a word at a time, they don't have logic. They're not employing any kind of if then else or fact checking themselves. It's predicting the next word in a conversation based on all those billions of pieces of yarn. So use your ability to understand logic. This is another similar thing. Read this online if you download it, because the examples are pretty good if you read them in detail. So here's a robot being cross-directed under oath in front of the judge. So some other tactics are when you're asking elaborating questions, as I did in a couple other earlier examples, ask about specific points. So something that really leaped out to you as either illogical or seems wrong, or something that's very, very concrete, perhaps, that surprised you or you didn't know, and you want to just fact check that, you can ask it. Now, you're going to ultimately do fact checking at other websites or other sources, but you can get it to admit its own lies to some degree by asking for elaborations, providing more detail, third bullet point. And then one thing I like to do is ask for links. As you saw earlier, I wanted a link to an authoritative reference. So you can often look up, very frequently the links are dead. And when they're not dead, they're almost always irrelevant. So that can point you work backwards from that to things that were maybe inaccurate. Because if it can't reference, again, the way it's working is not building a reference list and then giving you information based on that. But if it can't sort of provide you a chain of evidence, then that's pointing to places where you might want to investigate further. And then, I think this is my last tip, AI deathmatch. So I did this a little bit earlier. This was Google Bard's version of the thing that that Google had gotten, ChatGPT had gotten right. So, and not to belabor this, but RIC, then divide all by E, is the correct way to do things. So that's the winner. Except not really, because as I told you earlier, some of that is wrong and illogical as well. So you're getting you're getting truth and lies in the ChatGPT thing. For Bard, it was just, what are you smoking? yarn, I guess. Okay, that's all I've got content-wise. Again, hug your sponsors, and we got time for questions because I went pretty quick. Questions or points if you just want to say things. Andrew.
Glenn, thank you. I'm trying to look at trying to use these tools, these large language models in medical applications. And I was thinking I was going to be able to use reliability engineering systems of having BARD versus MedPalm versus ChatGPT versus other systems to synthesize an answer that they all agree on, or no answer if I can't get agreement. What I just saw said that's not going to work. What do you think is the solution to get reliability out of these devices?
Yeah, so I agree with you that we don't have the tools right now. There's no tool that you can apply that's actually going to fix the problem, except for blood, sweat, and tears, or gumshoe, shoe leather, or whatever you want, like doing your own research. Speaking of conspiracy theorists, got to do your own research. But yeah, so I think the right use today of LLMs, I say right use, my suggestion to you all, I don't know the right thing, but my suggestion would be that use them as inputs to a process that is not like sort of hands off at all. Don't look at these things as at all hands off. They can get you started and get the creative juices flowing. They can feed you with some facts actually that are true. You know, and the older the subject is, the more likely the facts are true because it's just been trained. It's not even that let me correct myself on that in a second, but you want to look for the things that are more likely to be true. And those would be when the original source of the information is authoritative enough and varied enough, meaning it got enough data fed into it, because you could have the exact right answer to who is Daniel Elzadeh, and yet it hasn't been trained on that often enough to not go off on weird tangents and be super creative about the answer. So it's sort of like the older a topic or a piece of information is, like Battle of Hastings, pretty good. I quizzed it on Battle of Hastings, and I'm not a historian, but I think it got it right. And I think it's right now, today, you could do some of the pitting, like the death match of different AIs, which is kind of the approach you're taking, but it's not going to be automated, in my opinion. I think that's very risky. Anybody else? Points? Yeah, Drew. Okay.
So just a quick comment and question is, my understanding is most of these AI are not going to have a specific link or URL it's not going to be able to give you a specific reference. So, you were just saying, like, what are your sources? When I've asked that, I usually get the answer, well, I get my information from a variety of things, just a generic answer. So I'm just curious if you have any elaboration on that in terms of getting sources from ChatGPT.
I think you're right based on how they work. It's not, it may be composing the URL from its normal way of predicting the next word, right? There is a tokenization kind of situation where I think a URL is considered a single word. So it's like when it knows it needs to put a URL out next, it's maybe using what, at least at the time of its training, was a valid URL. I don't know that to be true for sure. So your mileage may vary. But frequently I have gotten links to authoritative references where the link actually did work and it actually was relevant and actually did prove to be true. So you're going to get you are definitely going to get a lot of links that are none of the above, right? They're probably broken, right? So all I say is to let that be maybe a source of your suspicion to validate other parts of it. Was that it? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Roger.
So I found that Bing actually works pretty well for citing its references.
Yep.
And I was initially using Bing more than ChatGPT, and yeah, it always like gives you its references when it passes references, and they've always checked out when I've tried them. So I don't know. I think Bing is based on ChatGPT, so I don't really know why Bing provides that information and why it would be more
Yeah, I don't know the mechanisms by which it worked, but I do know that Bing always says loading, it'll say loading this link. Like if I ask it to summarize an article or whatever, it'll say, or any other topic for that matter, it'll say searching for blah. And that'll stay up there for however long it takes, and then it gets to the answer, and it is footnoted with like little references. Bard, Google's thing, is doing the same thing, but I found that I don't know, I haven't spent a ton of time with either of those two. I've spent more time with ChatGPT, and I've just found that I'm not getting great answers, even though they may be more truthful. maybe I want to be lied to or something like that. Is there another one? Yeah.
I just looked up how to get a job in tech sales in ChatGPT, and then and of course it gave me, a listicle of 7 points, and then I said, please provide reference information, and all 4 of these, which look like legitimate URLs, ended up 404s. So.
Yeah, that sounds about par for the course, actually. Yeah, maybe I could. I can't recall which links I've had that worked better. I do, and I'm not an expert on this, unfortunately, I guess. But I think it's the older a topic is, the more likely it is going to be to point to something legit. Battle of Hastings.
What was the question that you asked?
Oh, sorry. She was saying that she searched, what was it, how to get a job in tech sales?
Yeah.
And it put out 7 or 8 links, 9 links that were all 404s.
Yeah, it put out 7 points, which
7
looked
points.
fast to me
Right.
because I work in tech sales. And then I said, please provide reference information. And then it provided 4 websites who are authoritative websites,
Uh-huh.
but the actual URL goes to a 404
Yeah.
file not found. So they all ended up with dead links.
That's interesting that it got the domain to be reasonable, but not the URL. Maybe it is looking at, maybe it's creating that URL piece by piece.
I think it is, because when you have a blog that's written or an article that's written, you have the slash whatever,
Yeah.
article 2. And so some of that stuff, people will move off their website. So it makes sense that if it's 12 years old, it's gone. Perhaps. True. If you take good care of it.
But look on web.archive.com
Yeah, true.
or .org or whatever the Wayback Engine is.
Yes.
You can see historically.
Yes.
And I've come across that. I get those 404s, so I'm like, well, maybe this existed at one point, and I can just go to the archive. They're usually not in the archive either.
Well, but the URL's been killed, right? It's dead.
But it never existed, is what Roger's saying.
Yeah.
By the way, since we're still sort of on the topic, not quite, of summarizing articles, one thing you can do is simply paste in the text of the article. Instead of passing it a URL, hey, summarize this writer.com article for me, which absolutely didn't work. I later on went through and pasted part of the text of the article in, and it did a much better job. But the LLMs and their memory cells that look back in the conversation are limited to some depth, right? So even then, the longer you go with a conversation or some of the summarization task, the more likely it is to hallucinate, I think. Hey, thanks everyone. I really appreciate your time and attention. Yeah.